We're driving a 2024 Toyota Sienna, but Toyota recently revealed details of the 2025 model. So instead of our normal review format, we're going to answer a question. Should you get a 2024 Sienna, maybe for a deal, or wait for the 2025?
But first, here's how much the Sienna costs.
Let's start off with what is changing. They've made some interior updates for the 2025 model year. The dash, the center console, the seats, all those materials are supposed to be better. Oh, and they've also updated this faux wood grain.
One of our complaints with the current Sienna is that these plastics feel very cheap.
So hopefully some of those updates add a little bit of premium feel to the Sienna. For me, one of the big updates for 2025 is the infotainment system. So I've been using this 9-inch screen for the better part of a week now. It looks really dated in terms of the interface. Typically we like these physical buttons, but we've used Toyota's modern interface, which is not this, and we've gotten very used to it. Very simple, easy, looks a little bit more contemporary. Then the other pain point I've had with this is that I have not been able to connect Apple CarPlay in it. Maybe it's the wire I'm using or something, but
I tried it also, different wire.
didn't work?
Didn't work.
If we had the 2025 system, it would have worked because they have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard. So the new infotainment setup for 2025, there's a base 8-inch screen, slightly smaller than this one, but still workable. And then on all other trims, it's a 12.3-inch unit. Based on how underwhelming this experience has been, that new infotainment setup for the 2025 model is awfully compelling. I'm also hoping that with the updated infotainment system, they might have a higher res backup camera, because the one in here, kind of digitized. Another 2025 update, the gauge cluster display. They're now going to offer a 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster on the mid to high level trims. Currently we've got like a little screen in here. It maxes out at 7 inches in the higher trims for the 2024 model, but having a vivid digital display here, that's an improvement. A couple other updates for 2025, wireless phone charging is standard and it will charge more quickly. They've also standardized USB-C ports throughout the cabin, and then a couple of new features. They've got a chill box so you can keep beverages cool, and a vacuum cleaner. Both of those features will be standard on the 2025 Platinum trim and optional on the Limited trim. Oh, and 2025 for the Sienna marks the debut of Toyota's new rear seat reminder system, which uses millimeter radar to detect any movement in the vehicle, and it'll do things like flash the lights, honk the horn if you've left something alive back there, and it can also contact you on your phone via the Toyota app. From the outside, there are really minor differences for 2025. A few little trim changes, some new wheel choices. They're adding a hybrid badge, so you know it's a hybrid. Oh, and there's also a two-tone paint option for the Platinum trim.
Ooh.
2 tones. So that's all the stuff that's changing for 2025. What's not changing? Everything else, and that's a lot of stuff. So you have a lot of small storage around here. You got this bridge console.
It's generously sized enough to store a purse, which is awesome because it keeps it out of view.
And then you still have this area up here where you've got your cup holders and the shifter and stuff like that. You kind of have the best of both worlds of a high console and then also that open space below.
This is the one vehicle where I cannot complain about the amount of cup holders. There are 18, and in the front seat, I'm allotted 4.
Cargo space is similarly generous. There are 33.5 cubic feet behind the third row. It's got that deep well. And then if you need even more space, a single pull on the third row drops them into that cargo well. I do wish you could remove the second row seats, but they do have a very long slide function, which allows you to apportion space in a lot of different ways. If there's nobody in the third row, slide the second row seats all the way back and you've got like nearly infinite legroom. And in each position, I fit really well. So a lot of passenger space, a lot of cargo space. Kiddo, how do you find climbing in and out of the Toyota Sienna?
Super easy. It's low and there's a huge grab handle.
Yeah, that grab handle's cool too because it goes down really low, so even if you were like a little kiddo instead of a medium kiddo, you could still help pull yourself back in. I do find moving that second row like out of the way, sometimes it's like a little finicky. It's like, oh, I gotta put the seat bottom down first or do this one. Once you get it, you'll get it, but I think I've been spoiled by some of the one-touch functions that are available in other vehicles. Nonetheless, once you slide the second row forward, very easy to get into the third row, or you can walk down the center in versions that have second row captain's chairs. Basically, the Sienna's functionality is quite strong, and that will carry through into 2025.
As for latch points, there are lower anchors in the second and third row. And I think there would be room for a rear-facing car seat in the second and third row.
From a powertrain perspective, nothing is changing. We still have the same hybrid setup, 245 horsepower. When you accelerate, it'll do that kind of thing. If you're coming from a traditional non-hybrid vehicle, that racing engine quality, sometimes people need to adapt. But what you can't complain about is fuel economy. The Sienna, I don't think there's any reason why fuel economy numbers should change going into 2025 because there's no other changes. And this thing is super efficient. For ride quality, the Sienna does not defy its minivan label. So not necessarily a fun vehicle to drive, but that is not the premise. Quite comfortable, I find. I did a bunch of driving this week and it did a great job. I also was impressed with the brakes. These are hybrid brakes and there's like a little bit of an artificial feel, and yet when I come to a smooth stop, well, I'm kind of calling my shot here by saying it's smooth, but tell me this isn't smooth.
I can't tell you it isn't smooth.
Exactly.
It's
Look how smooth
smooth.
that was. So smooth.
As smooth as a glass floor, if it isn't broken.
Thank you for the caveat there. Oh, kid, I can't wait till you're old enough to see Die Hard. The last thing that won't change is crash test data. So the NHTSA rates the Sienna 5 stars overall. It's a top safety pick from the IIHS. We also have 10 airbags standard, plus a full suite of active driver assist technology. All of that carries on forward. With all that on the table, let's get to the crux of this video. Should you buy a 2024 model and try and get a deal on it, or wait for the 2025? Number one, Toyota rarely has vehicles that spend a lot of time on the lot. That means even with the 2024s, it might be difficult to negotiate an absolutely excellent deal. The other thing is that the price for 2025 has only jumped about $1,500 for the base trim. I haven't seen a whole price rundown on every individual trim, but assuming it's roughly in that space, $1,500 to go to a better infotainment setup and a nicer interior seems worth it, especially when you consider that simply going from a 2024 to a 2025 will probably get you pretty close to that $1,500 back in terms of residual values when you trade it in. Oh, you're trading in 2024? Well, that's this number. You trading in 2025? Oh, here's that bigger number. By continuing the positive fundamentals of this Sienna and addressing some of our little annoyances with the current model, yeah, I think unless you can get an absolutely mind-blowing deal on a 2024, you should totally get the 2025. But if you'd like to tell us why we're wrong, you can do so in the comments. Family, I think we've done a good job answering a question about the Toyota Sienna. May I have a 5 and a 5? You. Come get your high five. Bam!